Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with bribery, fraud and breach of trust. The indictments followed 3 long-running investigations into allegations that Mr. Netanyahu accepted gifts and twisted government policy in return for, among other things, positive media coverage. On Thursday evening, Mr. Netanyahu criticised the whole process.
This evening, we are witnessing an attempted coup against a prime minister, with false charges and a contaminated and tendentious investigation process. I think you need to be blind in order not to see that something wrong is going on among the police investigators and the prosecution. You must have noticed that the Attorney General's decision is being published today, of all days, in unprecedented record speed. I would say in the most sensitive timing of a political system ever since the state was established.
Mr. Netanyahu referring there to his country's state of political limbo. Neither he nor his principal opponent, Benny Gantz, has been able to form a new coalition government since inconclusive elections in September. On the line now from Tel Aviv is Tal Schneider. She is diplomatic and political correspondent for the Globe's business newspaper. Welcome, Tal. We heard a defiant morning, Mr. Netanyahu there sounding defiant. What's the thinking now as to how these indictments will affect his political position?
Right. So Israel is experiencing a severe constitutional crisis. We have a sitting prime minister who have already lost twice this year. He lost in a way that he was unable to form a government twice, in April and then in September. And as of now, of course, he is unwilling to step down. The Israeli law doesn't force him out. But obviously, the fact that he is unable to form a government is tied to his legal situation. And he keeps the country at this stalemate, claiming that he is innocent and he has to remain in his seat, whereas his political opponents say, we are not going to join into government with you if you have to go through court proceedings and criminal, severe offenses. So as of this morning on Sunday, we are getting some political rivals from within his own party. Chiefly, Gideon Sa'ar used to be a minister under him, interior minister, a couple of years ago, and he's challenging him. I have to say, this is happening after so many years where no political challenger came from within the Likud, the ruling party. Still, with this challenge, I'm not sure that his party members will be able to remove him or convince him that he has to step down. And his chief political rival from the other party, Benny Gantz, former chief IDF, is also unable to form a government because he doesn't have enough majority, enough seats to form such a government.
So as things stand, Mr. Netanyahu would go into yet another election having been charged with corruption. That's assuming people in his party failed to kick him out.
Right. Within 19 days as of today, the country will go into a third election in 1 year, a severe situation we have never experienced in the country's history. We've never experienced a double election on the same year, let alone to say a third election. This is very detrimental to us. We have a budget problem, a budget deficit. All of the government functions are upheld. Nothing is really working at the moment. And Netanyahu is actually in a position which we call the outgoing prime minister or the interim prime minister. It's not really a formal situation because it's not very well defined under the laws, but obviously he cannot nominate, he cannot come up with reforms. His hands are tied. And the most problematic part is that we do not expect different results, even if we go to a third election, because who tells us that the situation will be different in March if we have a different election? So, it's hard to be an Israeli this morning with this situation.
I'm sure you're aware of President Trump's boast in the US that he could do practically anything and his fans would still love him. Does Mr. Netanyahu have a similarly solid base in Israel, do you think?
Netanyahu does have a solid base within his party, but I have to tell you one thing: Israel's system is based on the British system. It's not based on the American system, which means our legal advisor, the Attorney General, and the entire ruling of the judges, of the state attorneys, of the criminal investigator is a strong position. And Netanyahu can't really do whatever he wants. It's unlike the American president. He doesn't have the executive powers to just, keep on running the government. So his base quite a dwindled between April and September, though it remains kind of strong within his party. The problem is not just his party. He needs to have, a public support. And right now he doesn't have that.
Tal Schneider in Tel Aviv, many thanks for coming on Weekend. You're listening to the BBC World Service. And here